Alright guys, welcome back to our session on functions. Today we embark on the journey of creating your own custom functions in Excel VBA. So this is going to be exciting. Well, Excel provides a plethora of built-in functions like VLOOKUP, COUNTIF, and SUMIFs. There are times when you need to tailor functions to perform specific operations and return desired results. Okay. Throughout this course, we have explored the various ways to automate tasks in Excel. From triggering macros via sub-procedures to leveraging worksheet and workbook events, ActiveX controls, and user form events, right? So now we're going to delve into the realm of functions and what they're all about, okay? So I like to think of function as in strict mathematical terms, okay? They are like a black box, okay, that performs certain type of operations. And these operations are your statement codes. And what this operation basically revolves around is it accepts inputs or input, okay, and then returns an output. So the output is returned in a output variable. Okay, that's the result. That's an output variable. So the syntax for a function is simple. I have to use the keyword function, and then the output variable. Okay, this is the output variable name. Keep that in mind. And then I have all the inputs. I have to open a bracket and I have all the inputs. And if I have an optional input, which means an input that is not required, okay, but it's an optional, then I'm going to use the keyword optional. And then I'm going to close the bracket and then I'm going to say as variant. This variant is for the accounting for the output variable. Okay, this is the output variable. That's as a variant. And all of this is a variant. Why do I leave it as variant? You don't have to, but I leave it as variant to simplify life because a variant can be anything, so as to avoid potential mismatch. Okay. Finally, before we proceed off to doing some examples, once again, I'd like to emphasize, please remember that functions are sort of in mathematical, in the context of a mathematical sphere, meaning that do not write operations related to cells like changing active cell color, or fonts, bold, etc. Okay? Don't try to do something like that. Generally, if you could avoid that. If you need to do something that's related to the active VBA object model, go for the normal sub-procedure. A function, as how I like to see it, have inputs, perform some operations, some mathematical operations, and returns a result. Okay, one result. Okay, so let's get onto the VBA editor and see how we can invoke this wonderful procedure. So I'm going to go, I'll be inside the procedure and I can just say insert procedure. And you see I have sub, there's a normal sub, and then I have a function and I can name it that way. But I rather not do it that way. I'm just showing you how it can be done. What I generally like to do is I just like to type the word function. So my output, I'm just going to let's create our first function. I'm going to say my output, okay, that's my output variable. And then I'm going to say A, that's my input variant. Okay, you have to specify the data type, right? So as I said, I leave it as variant, but it's up to you. Okay, it's up to you. And optional, I'm just going to have one optional D as variant. And then I'm going to close and say that the output is also a variant. So what's this output giving us, right? Think about it in mathematical context, right? It's giving us a result based on the input. So I'm going to say A plus B plus C, and then I'm just going to say I'm going to concatenate it with the space. All right, so 2 space, and then I'm just going to say ND. So it's a very simple function, right? Make sure you don't have a typo, right? Okay, yeah, and case, make sure the case has to be right, okay? Case sensitive. Now we have written the first function. I'm going to invoke it on the Excel worksheet. So I'm going to go to my output. Now I'm open the bracket, and if I go inside this function argument, and I have this dialog box. So you can see all the ones in bold, ABC in bold, are the mandatory fields. So I'm just going to say 25, 25, 25, and I'm just going to say is my answer, right? Because we are combining it with the D. D was an optional argument. And sure enough, I have the answer. 75 is my answer. So this is the basic premise of a function. So as I told you, don't try to do something like sheet 1 dot range A5 dot interior dot color equals to VBA dot VBA yellow, right? Try to avoid interacting with the VBA object library. Okay, so that's just my advice, because more often than times you'll be disappointed. See, as I'm disappointed here, doesn't work. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to point out. That's why I told you think of function strictly in mathematical context. Okay, so we're going to build a function that calculates BMI. So for those of you who have been using the not the metric convention, then we use the meter and the kg, right? Meter and kg, right? So I'm just going to say function. What's the output? The amount output is my BMI, and then I'm just going to say the input is a kg as variant, and then I'm going to have meter. I'm just going to name it m as variant. Okay. And what's the output type? As variant as well. This is how I like to do it. Okay. So what's the formula for BMI? It's just kg divided by meter times meter. Okay. And then I'm just going to say format. I'm just going to format it. Okay. So I'm going to say I'm going to format the my BMI to something like this. Okay, I'm going to have this pound. And I'm going to say 004. So this is a type of formatting in Excel. So if you're not familiar with the formatting, this is an Excel course, right? So I'm not going to go too much into it, right? So basically, but what I'm saying is that, right? So this is a number argument. So basically, it can be anything, right? There's no restriction. But when I have this 00, I'm saying it needs to be 2 decimal places. Okay, so that's what, in general, what I'm writing there. Okay, but if you want to know more into custom formatting, then you should try to pick up some resources from the internet on custom formatting in Excel, right? Because this is part of an the formatting is actually part of Excel knowledge, which you're just translating into VBA. And as I've told you, at the end of the day, Excel and VBA can complement each other. Okay, that's what makes Visual Basic Application so powerful, right? We saw in many instances how they interact with the Excel functionality, right? So what I've said is that my BMI, basically 24, and then some space, and I'm just going to combine it with this string, is my BMI. Okay, so hopefully it works, and we're going to test it out. So I'm just going to say we just wrote something a little bit more complicated, okay? And I hope we did not make any mistake. And I'm just going to go my function. What's the kg? I'm just going to put 80 kg, not specifically referring to anyone's weight. Okay, so 1.80 meter, and then I get the results. 24.69 is my BMI. Okay, so I've written a second, more complicated, not more complicated, a slightly more advanced function. All right. Now I want to point out before I wrap up, I just want to say that you can even use an Excel and VBA function inside your function, right? So there is no rule that says you cannot write. We're gonna say my round. There's no rule that says that you cannot write VBA to enclose this function into another function. All right. There's no such hard rule. Okay, so be flexible. Okay, so I'm just going to invoke some very simple function whereby I'm going to say my round, and we're going to use the VBA.round. Okay, the VBA round basically is rounding off, right? It's rounding off. So and then just round A. Okay, so now I have my own function, and it's leveraging on VBA's function. You can also use Excel.worksheet functions, up to you. Okay, so now if I go equals to my round, I'm just going to put 24.7, right? So I'm going to get 25. I expect to get 25. Yeah, I got 25. Now if I put 24.3, I'm getting 24. So as you could see, I have been able to leverage on the VBA function, and what I did was to wrap up this function within inside another function, which was the Excel, which was the native VBA function. Okay, so that's about it, guys, for functions. I hope you've understood now how to get around with functions. So we have one more session to go, and that is charts. Okay, so VBA charting, very interesting in the upcoming session. I'll see you then.